Hi, I'm Lauren, a certified teacher and literacy specialist, and oh no! Lady Plumel's pearl necklace is missing! Can you help Inspector Squawk crack the case? I bet you can. Up next is The Pearl Caper, written by me, Lauren Fornoles, and illustrated by Natalia Gubanova. The Pearl Caper. Lady Plumel stares out her window. What wretched weather! How will my guests arrive for my fabulous dinner party in all this rain? Miss Meadow shrugs her furry shoulders as she sips her tea. They'll come, don't worry, she says. I hope so. I wanted to show off my new pearl necklace. Lady Plumel admires herself in her own window. And I must say, you're such a dear for helping me with this party. What's on the menu for dinner? Miss Meadow's cottontail twitches. I told Mrs. Peck to prepare oysters, a salad, pasta, and onion soup. Scrumptious! But you know my guests don't like seafood, Lady Plumel says. Oh well, I guess someone will eat those oysters. Boom! A loud clap of thunder shakes the Plumel manor, and the room plunges into total darkness. Oh dear! Lightning must have struck the power line! Miss Meadow says, I'll hop over and get some candles. Well, this is exciting. A candlelight supper, Lady Plumel squeals. The drenched guests soon arrive, dripping water all over the Plumel rug. Welcome, welcome! Oh, watch where your paws and claws are stepping, Lady Plumel says as she leads them across the dining room. Miss Pitterpat, a sweet kitten, sits down to her bowl of onion soup and politely asks for the salt shaker. Mr. Wolfsbane passes it to her with a toothy smile. Here you are, miss, the wolf gentleman says. Suddenly, the kitten girl hisses, That's the hot pepper! I beg your pardon, Mr. Wolfsbane says. So much for being a sweet, innocent kitten, he thinks. Mr. Gaterson, an insurance salesman with an enormous appetite, devoured his soup in one gulp. He jokes to Lady Plumel, I'm so hungry I could eat you whole. Lady Plumel is not amused. Across the table, the other guests are deep in conversation. Yes, that's right, Inspector, says Sir Seath. The pearl necklace was originally worn by Empress Alexandra of Russia. I would love to add it to my personal collection. Inspector Squawk replies, You certainly know a great deal about antiques. Tell me more about this necklace. Once the guests have emptied their bowls, Mrs. Peck sets the main course on the table. Returning to the kitchen with a pile of dirty dishes, she grumbles, I wish some of them would wash my dishes and prepare my meals. It would be nice to be the one in jewels, and to be waited on hand and foot. A sudden gust blows the candles out. The guests hear a scream and several loud thumps. You've stepped on my paw, Miss Pitterpat hisses. Sorry, Sir Seath apologizes. Turn on the lights, shouts Mr. Wolfsbane. The power's out, cries Lady Plumel. With that, all the guests begin to panic. Finally, Mr. Gaterson growls, Well, somebody light a match! Mr. Wolfsbane strikes a match, and a small flame appears. In the dim light, the guests can just see the shadow of a hand reach towards Lady Plumel's neck, and then The flame goes out! At last, Miss Meadow brings some candles in from the kitchen. Miss Pitterpat shrieks, "Lady Plumel! Your pearl necklace! It's missing!" Lady Plumel flaps her wings and faints. Everyone starts talking at once. "Look at this mess," Mrs. Peck says, pointing to the overturned chairs and spilled dinner. Miss Meadow hops in to help. "I'll help you clear the table and bring the dishes to the kitchen," she says. Lady Plumel emerges very quickly from her faint. "I must have my necklace back. If only we had a detective here who could figure it out." "Madam, at your service," says Inspector Squawk. "Why, of course, Inspector Squawk. Can you find the thief?" asks Lady Plumel. "I'll certainly try my best. All of you can help me search for clues. Let's begin." The guests search everywhere. Mr. Wolfsbane sniffs under the table. The cook pecks about the kitchen, while Mr. Gaterson examines the rug. Sir Seath slithers behind the chairs. Finally, Miss Pitterpat finds something. Inspector Squawk examines the clue. "It seems to be a piece of thread with metal at one end. What could it be?" he mutters. "Well, Inspector Squawk," says Miss Pitterpat, "I've seen this often enough. It's the string for a necklace. See, here's the metal clasp at one end." "Well, of course it is. I knew that," the inspector says. The guests are not convinced. "Yes, that's my necklace," Lady Plumel says. "But where are the pearls?" "All in due time, my dear lady. It's quite possible that the criminal has the pearls on them. Therefore, we must examine each guest's motive to determine if one had a reason to take the necklace." All the guests shift in their chairs. Sir Seath stands up and speaks. "I like to collect rare antiques, but I didn't take the pearl necklace." "Calm down, no one is accusing you. But I do remember you saying earlier that you wanted to add the necklace to your personal collection," the inspector says. Sir Seath flicks his forked tongue. The parrot inspector turns to face Mrs. Peck. "You could have done it, Mrs. Peck. I heard you grumbling earlier. You wanted to be the one in jewels being waited on hand and foot, correct?" Mrs. Peck stuffs her wingtips into her deep apron pockets. "Or you could have done it, Mr. Gaterson. As an insurance sales gator, you know how much the necklace is worth. Perhaps you decided to steal it to sell it again." Mr. Gaterson mumbles through his enormous teeth with a guilty look on his face. "Or it could have been you, Mr. Wolfsbane. If I remember correctly, you were holding the match when the pearl necklace was stolen. I guess it's just a coincidence that as soon as your match went out, the pearls were gone, eh?" Mr. Wolfsbane starts to raise his voice, but then thought better of it. His bottled-up anger turns his face a deep shade of purple. The inspector turns to the kitten girl. "Miss Pitterpat, you were very angry earlier this evening, weren't you?" "I suppose," Miss Pitterpat says slowly. "Anger makes us do strange things. It's possible that in a fit of anger you stole the necklace. After all, who would suspect such a sweet-faced kitten?" Miss Pitterpat hisses. "Or perhaps it was you, Miss Meadow. You were awfully quick to hop off to the kitchen after the pearl necklace was stolen. Is there something you're trying to hide?" Miss Meadow's face turns as scarlet as a field of roses. "Or maybe it's the person that everyone would least expect. Lady Plumel herself!" exclaims Inspector Squawk. You are absolutely crazy! Why would I do a thing like that? Lady Plumel asks. To collect the insurance, Mr. Gatorson says. It would be very simple to report the necklaces stolen and then get all the money it's worth. And all the attention, too. Well, maybe it was you, Sir Seath says to the parrot inspector. Don't be silly. I would never steal. I would risk losing my job as an esteemed crime fighter, Inspector Squawk replies. Well, one of us must have taken the pearls, Mr. Wolfsbane says. But who? Each guest looks more guilty than the next. Each had a motive. And where are the pearls to the necklace? Do you know? Let's find out. Finally, Inspector Squawk announces, I know who has taken the pearls. All of the guests look up anxiously. The thief is none other than Lady Plumel's friend, Miss Meadow! Several guests gasp. Then where are the pearls, Inspector? Says Miss Meadow. Follow me and I'll show you. Inspector Squawk leads them to the kitchen, where all the dirty dishes and uneaten food lies in heaps in the sink. He picks up a plate of uneaten oysters. The crook took the pearls off the necklace and hid them where they would be less obvious to the eye. Inspector Squawk pries one of the oysters open. Inside is a glittering pearl. Oh my! Exclaims Sir Seath. Well, I'll be, says Mr. Gatorson. Who would have thought? Said Mr. Wolfsbane. My pearls! Squeals Lady Plumel. While all the guests open the other oysters, Inspector Squawk explains the rest of the mystery. Tired of her friend showing off, Miss Meadow decided to help Lady Plumel at her party, and herself to the pearls. So she told Mrs. Peck to prepare a dinner with something on the menu she knew none of us would eat. The oysters. That's right! I told her that none of my guests liked seafood, says Lady Plumel. Mr. Wolfsbane pats the inspector on the back. Miss Meadow sulks in a chair by the kitchen table, her head in her paws. We will notify the police immediately, said Mr. Gatorson. Thank you so much for finding my necklace, says Lady Plumel. I'll make it into a badge so that you can remember this mystery forever. That's very kind of you, said Inspector Squawk, but I don't think I'll need anything to remember this case. The end. I hope you enjoyed this time at the Storied Forest, and we can't wait to see you again next time. Goodbye.